We are live.
Welcome in to Inside Carolina's On the Beat Live podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. That's Ross Martin. Inside Carolina, that's producer John Adam Smith. Getting back from the big city. Let's get right into it, boys. Ross Martin. Dewey Burke was fired up last night. Don't know if you heard it, don't know if you read it, but it's created a quite a stir on the message boards with folks, I think, feeling validated to hear some of the same stuff from a former player that they've been saying. What do you think about all this? What do you think about this North Carolina basketball team? Won against Notre Dame, has to win out without question.
Yeah, I mean, this team can't shoot. I think it boils down to a lot of that. I did listen to the podcast actually. He was upset that they showed that they could play with energy, and yet they didn't come out with energy in the first half. Lowest shooting percentage in 40 years, something like that. And then, man, 0 for 9 from three, I think, and no assists. It's just, man, 19 points. That's bad. But credit to them. They got the win. They made some plays. Everything looks a little bit better when Baycott gets the ball down low and he starts hitting some shots. But RJ looked good. But yeah, man, I mean, Notre Dame's not a good team. And so UNC definitely struggled with them. They got the win. But I think it's, to put it simply, this team can't shoot. It's kind of like we keep saying it, Groundhog Day on this podcast. I'm sure a lot of other podcasts, but I mean, you make a couple of those threes in the first half, a completely different game.
Yeah, you nailed it right there with Groundhog Day. It certainly feels like we're watching the same thing over and over. I saw somebody respond, or maybe somebody in the chat saying that we were being overly negative. They won. Okay. They definitely won. Really surprised to hear Hubert talk about how great a team Notre Dame was. I mean, it's pretty clear Notre Dame is bad.
Yeah, I saw that comment. He says that about every team, though. Like, that's
Yeah.
just what he says. I know it's weird, but he calls every team and coach unbelievable. I mean, he has some go-to lines. I mean, I've never heard a guy who can rattle off the same phrasing for things. And unbelievable is what he uses to describe the opponent. It's just what it is. I don't know. I mean, yeah, Notre Dame. What's their record? Like 2 and something in the ACC, right?
2-15 now.
Yes, I mean,
Not a good basketball team. I don't care. They've got some good players, but they're definitely not a good basketball team. John B.,
You
get in
you
here.
you referenced the stats, Ross. I want to be really specific with our viewers here. So the field goal percentage UNC had last night in the first half was the lowest in a first half since going 0 for 2 in the first half at Duke in 1979. So the lowest field goal percentage basically since zero. That's
Neither one of y'all were alive.
Did you reference that this morning, Tommy? Oh, they were at 0 points at halftime.
So Carolina and Duke was 7-0 at halftime back in
Yeah.
the 70s. Was it that game
I think
in
so.
79? I remember watching it at my grandma's house. That shows you how old I'm getting.
It must have been. The other stat that I think is crazy. It's the first time UNC scored as few as 19 points and a half in a win since beating Purdue in Madison Square Garden in 1998. So I was 1 year old for that game. The Tar Heels trailed Purdue 26-19 at halftime, but rallied for a 54-47 win. Tommy, do you remember that game? Do you remember where that was?
Absolutely. I mean, that's 98. So that was right after Jameson kissed the court in San Antonio, I believe, signifying that he was leaving. And so he was gone. Carter and Jameson were gone, and Carolina was sort of on a little rebuild with Guthridge that year. I think that was if my memory serves, is that the year they lost to Weber State in the NCAA tournament in 99, or Penn State maybe? I can't remember. It runs together, setting a lot of records. North Carolina basketball has been around 100-plus years, and this team's setting records, and not a good way. So I really don't think, to be quite honest, I don't think we can be too negative or too critical about it, because it certainly is what it is. Ross, the one thing that Dewey said, and I want to talk about it, and this is the most frustrating. I mean, you've been around these players and all. They can play. That's what I cannot for the life of me figure out, and it'll be one of the greatest mysteries. Like you said, it is just a game, but This team can play. These dudes can play. But yet, for whatever reason, they just don't. Why?
It's yeah, it's confusing. I mean, I do think, I mean, yeah, they can play, but they can't shoot. I mean, they're missing open shots. I do think there's some sort of lack of leadership. I know I've thought that kind of all along. I know Dewey mentioned that this morning, or I listened this morning. I'm saying this morning, but last night. I do think there's some sort of lack of leadership, maybe some lack of chemistry, a lack of motivation, maybe. But yeah, we've seen this. We've seen Caleb Love, RJ Armando, Leaky to a certain extent, Puff to a certain extent, be good at Carolina. They've almost all regressed in some way. I think Armando's about the same. RJ maybe a little bit better. Caleb probably a little worse, but he's had some moments this year as well. I mean, Puff. I mean, everybody's calling for Puff, man. He's cold from three as well. He's 0 for 4 last night. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain why this team can't put it all together. It's too late now almost. You're gonna have to win out, and I guess we'll get to that later. But they got a tough road ahead of them to try to make the tournament here. I mean, one of the big things that stands out to me is they were 2 for 23 from three, but 2 of those were made by Caleb. So everyone else was 0 for 21. Puff 0 for 4, DeMarco 0 for 3, Pete Nance 0 for 3, RJ 0 for 4, and Leaky Black 0 for 3 from 3, just missing open threes throughout the game. I think the rebounding was great. They attacked the offensive glass. I mean, that was obvious. There's some stats here. I'm looking at Steve Kirshner's notes. 52 rebounds were the most in a 40-minute game this season. The 23 offensive rebounds was a season high, and they had 3 players with double-digit rebounds. So they were aggressive, and they were very active on the offensive glass and dominated Notre Dame on the offensive glass. That's a big reason why they won. I mean, getting those second chance opportunities, miss, offensive rebound, and then they finally would make a basket.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed the set, not really a set for Leaky, but it ended up with Leaky going one-on-one, and then Leaky has the guy's 6'9", he has a dunk underneath and pins himself. But ultimately, that helped Carolina because it allowed them to continue to run clock because it counted as offensive rebound, the shot clock reset or turned off. And so I want to bring up a comment right here. Michael Stroud in the chat, I'm going to throw it up here. Says, compare this team to the Doherty team that went 8-20. I don't think it compares to that team. 8-20 is brutal. For reference, how quick you can turn it around in the portal, State lost 22 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
But to the point that I was making earlier is that 8-20 team was not good. They didn't have anybody that was good. No disrespect to Jason Capel. I don't want any of that smoke. But that team didn't have anybody. And they had some guards that struggled getting the ball up the floor, period. This team doesn't have that. And that's what's so frustrating. This team has got high-level talent that is capable, and it's not. So sort of the 8-20 year was like you just knew what you were going to get. You knew they were going to play. You knew they were not as talented. They were going to get beat. And you just sort of lived with it, especially after, you realized it was going downhill. This team is just a different animal. That's why Dewey's so fired up about it. That's why the fan base is so fired up about it. And that is it's the same thing. You mentioned Groundhog Day. Let's go back to that. Groundhog Day and insanity all go together. And the starting lineup, Ross, hadn't changed at all. Do you think there's any chance the starting lineup changes this season?
No, we had thought maybe it would change ahead of NC State, but now that it hasn't, and I don't think Puff has looked any better than Nance. Nance looked pretty good yesterday. I thought he probably one of his better games. He scored with UNC's first 7 points and ended up with double-digit rebounds and 5 assists, which is a career season high. So yeah, I think they're kind of splitting Puff and Pete, and I think that's the right move because Puff can't hit him either. I mean, it's just sad out there. You see Puff, Pete, and Leaky, and none of them hit threes, and those are at times your 3 and your 4 out there on the perimeter. And the DeMarco hasn't really hit one recently either. So when you just see those players on the perimeter, like who's going to hit a 3 here? It's
almost becomes, like I said on the post game, the worst miss of the night turned out to be an offensive rebound that helped Carolina win the game. Puff banking it off the side of the backboard from the corner. Uh, I will. We've banged on Pete Nance a lot, and he struggled, but I thought he was good last night, and he was the only person that could get the ball to Armando.
Yeah,
And
great passes.
yeah, and so those were big time things. They should do that more often. I mean, the high post game is where they've had some success, and Baycott seemed to be having fun with that. So shout out to Pete Nance for that. But the rest of the team, I mean, these guys got to figure it out. Virginia coming to town. I mean, legitimately, this game could be in the single digits in the first half with Virginia if they shoot like they did against Notre Dame. And so, anyway, I don't know what else to say about this team or whatever. I just know they got to win out and they got to make some noise in the ACC tournament.
Tommy, I did go look at the 8-20 team because I was curious. So there's a huge difference here. That 8-20 team in 2002, their adjusted offensive efficiency was 119th in the country. Adjusted defensive efficiency was 168th in the country. That is not this UNC team. UNC is 54th on offense and 49th in defense. They're solid in some of the advanced metrics. I think what they're missing maybe is some of the stuff that isn't captured in some of these statistics. I think like intensity, focus, obviously shooting, all the things we've been talking about. But I don't think you can compare these two teams, the 8-20 team and this team. I think also the expectations they had coming into the season was completely different. Like this team should be compared to the 2017 team that was, they had the heartbreak in the national championship game in 2016. They refocused in 2017, and obviously, you know what happened then. That's the team that this team should be compared to, but it just hasn't worked out this year.
Yeah, and you can't compare an 8-20 team to a team that's. I mean, they're 17-11. They've doubled up on the amount of wins. I mean, this team is 17-11. It's been very disappointing. They still have a winning record both overall and in conference, so it's hard to compare it there. Yeah, in the 2016-17 comparison, that team lost Marcus Page and Bryce Johnson, and we're still able to put it together and win the title. And this team lost Brady Manick, so you would think this team kind of had more returning talent on paper than the 16 team. But the 16 team, had the very strong leadership with the 17 team had very strong leadership with Theo Pinson and Joel Berry, and then the seniors were Kenny Meeks. And Isaiah Hicks and Justin Jackson obviously was a good leader. So your starting lineup, had three juniors and two seniors.
Yeah, that's one thing I've wanted to ask Vip to talk with Justin Jackson about, because I'm sure that 2017 team faced some of the same sort of questions about, kind of the disease of more that you've talked about, like who's going to step into these big roles. Everyone had a big role in 2016. Who's going to kind of take over that following year. But it didn't seem to hurt that team's chemistry. That team seemed to stay together. Obviously, they had a great run that March. But yet you kind of flip the calendar now to these past two seasons. It feels like maybe the chemistry of issues haven't quite been figured out there. Maybe, who's taking the final shot, or who's getting a majority of the shots on the team. Those types of questions maybe haven't quite been ironed out. Um, it's one of those, again, that intangible thing that maybe isn't captured in the Ken Palm numbers, but maybe I feel like that's been a little bit of a problem this season. Everyone trying to get their shot rather than focusing on setting up the others on the team and finding great shots for their teammates.
Yeah, and that was a couple things. One, on that subject right there, they always talk about the extra pass, and somebody posted a video or a GIF or whatever you call it when Nichols just standing over there in the corner wide open. Well, somebody else took a three that was an open three, but the extra pass gets you a even more open three. Let me say something about the 16 team. Justin Jackson did talk about that on one of our post-game podcasts. I asked him, and everybody talked about that. And he sort of set the record straight a little bit on that. Is that 16 team was top 5 in the country the entire year. They were good. This team last year was not good. They were just like they are this year, except they got hot when it mattered. So there's a little bit of a difference there. They did lose Page and Bryce Johnson, but they had guys, and they were always it wasn't a shock that they went to the national championship game against Villanova like it was for this Carolina team last year. And then, of course, like they've all talked about, is they came back with a purpose. And for whatever reason, these guys hadn't done it. And that's what Dewey has hammered on the entire time is How do you have a taste of it and then not want to get back, not do everything you can? And I get it when shots don't go in, but this is beyond that. There's so much going on with this team, and it's quite quite frankly a train wreck. And I don't know another way to put it. I see a question. Somebody start a question in the thing.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up this question. It's a good one from Tony. If we want to start to shift the conversation a little bit to Virginia and the final 3 games of the season. Tony asks, how does UNC win against Virginia if Armando gets double and triple teamed? That's a really good point. Tommy, you already said it. This could be a very low scoring game. So how do you think UNC can handle those potential double teams offensively?
They got to hit shots, right,
Yeah,
Ross?
got to hit shots, got to hit some threes, got to open it up. I mean, that's what Hubert says it too. It takes the pressure off Armando when you can kind of loosen up the defense, I think is oftentimes his wording. And remember, Mondo was hurt in the last game at Virginia. So UNC played them pretty tough up there without Armando. I think this team has regressed a little bit since then, honestly. But you get them at home. UNC's played generally pretty well at home. You think about that Clemson game. That seems almost like an outlier now, having lost to Miami and then State and then narrowly getting by Notre Dame. But they hit 14 or 16 threes,
15.
I think it's against Miami, which was their season high at the point. And they turned it out the next game. They had their season low percentage against Miami. So who knows?
If you don't hit threes against Virginia, you're not going to beat them. And if I'm Virginia on defense, I don't have one player take a step out of the 3-point line. Not one.
And the blueprint's out there what to do against Armando, right? I mean, there's enough tape now that there's no secrets. Like they're seeing the success of what happens when you double team them, when you triple team them, when to bring the double team, what gives them the most difficulties. And they have staff or assistant coaches looking at all the tape, and so they're going to be very well prepared on how to handle that. But yeah, it's a very simple game. I mean, you have to hit open shots. And I thought they pushed the ball a little bit better against Notre Dame at times. And I'm not sure where I saw this, but you never see Hubert pushing them up the court, doing like this with my hands, like Roy used to do. I read that somewhere or heard it somewhere. You don't see it anymore. So I would love to see this team play faster, especially when you have Caleb and RJ. But you saw some transition points against Notre Dame. I think Caleb had a couple, which was good to see, but still not. I mean, Roy would lose his stuff when the team wouldn't push it. Like that was a huge part of how they operated.
Yep. Well, listening to the On the Beat Live podcast, Ross Martin, John Bauman, and Tommy Ashley here. Adam Smith off tonight, watching Carolina women on the Gamecast mess around and give up an 8-0 run to Virginia Tech. So that's not going well either. Carolina and Virginia. What is that game? 5 o'clock Saturday? 6 o'clock in the Smith Center. If they shoot 2 for 23, they're going to get blown out. If they shoot 15 for 33 like they did against Clemson, I think they'll win comfortably. So somewhere in between there for North Carolina. But I think this is a game that Bacot, if Bacot has a double-double in this game, and I know he went nuts last year against Virginia, but given how Carolina shot it poorly, if Bacot has a 20 and 15 game here, I think he gets back in the ACC Player of the Year race, even though I don't think he's going to win it. But I don't know. I mean, it's time for Caleb and RJ to do something consistently. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I wanted to hang on that point too about Armando Bacot. If you watch UNC, I feel like sometimes their offense almost suffers from trying to just exclusively feed Armando the ball in the post because defenses know that's UNC's main goal. So they're doing lots of different things to challenge that. And as soon as Armando touches the ball, you've got help coming from all different areas of the floor, confusing Baycott. He's never been super good at finding the right read and kicking it into the weak side corner. But at this point in the season, too, the help has gotten just absolutely egregious. I mean, you have someone guarding the player in the weak side corner. I believe last night it was Tyler Nickel. The help side defender made an entire loop. He was closer to the other side of the court to his team's bench than he was to Tyler Nickel. So it's not just that they're helping off UNC's shooters or UNC's wing players, but they are abandoning that because teams know that UNC doesn't have the creativity or maybe even the will to kind of pass and kick. I mean, when's the last time you saw UNC really swing the ball around the perimeter and move it with a sense of urgency? I think that was a problem against NC State as well. Just sense of urgency, getting into sets. This is basic stuff for a veteran basketball team. I think we all know the play. It was going around Twitter, this clip where there was a basically Armando, RJ, and Caleb passing the ball in a triangle around the top of the key, and that's not a recipe for success when you're having that level of urgency. Kind of setting up your offense. You need to be able to get into those sets cleanly as we are moving the screens around a little bit.
I don't know. I think Ross
I
did
might
that.
have done that by mistake, John. Can you get us out of that? Yeah,
There
sorry.
you
I
go.
don't know what I did. Yeah.
I was getting nervous there as I was talking. You were just shooting me around.
I don't need that close up here. Let's go ahead and do a Johnny T-shirt read. It's 9:22 on the East Coast. It's on the Beat Live. 170. Wow. Shout out to the Inside Carolina folks that come in this chat every week. 178 plus. It was close to 300, maybe more last night in the post-game podcast at 11:30 at night after a Carolina game. So shout out to you guys. Shout out to Johnny T-shirt for all they do for Inside Carolina and InsideCarolina.com. The premium subscribers get 10% off. It's baseball season. Go see them. I will say this: the Navy baseball jerseys with the Carolina blue script, Tar Heels, those are nice. Go pick one up at Johnny T-shirt. You get 10% off if you're an Inside Carolina premium subscriber, and support them. If you don't want to buy anything sports related, you can get all the School of Journalism, pharmacy school, whatever kind of shirt you need there, sweatshirts and all. 85 degrees in North Carolina. If you're in the chat, tell us where you're from and what the weather was where you were, because it was 85 and I'm sunburnt. It's February 23rd. Let the national guys pay the bills. We'll be right back with more on the Beat Live. All right, guys, we're back. 9:23 on the Beat Live. Ross, let's kick it away from basketball just for a second. I thought Carolina lost a really good football coach today, but I cannot blame him 1 second for moving on to the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, John Lilly, tight ends coach for UNC, has left UNC for the Carolina Panthers. Takes the short drive down 85 from Chapel Hill to Charlotte. He spent 3 seasons at UNC. The tight ends got progressively better underneath John Lilly. I thought last year they're one of the biggest parts of the offense. Not very high profile coach. You don't really see him much on Twitter. You didn't really hear much of him as a recruiter. He did recruit Bryson Nesbitt, who I think was a pretty big get. This is the 4 people he recruited was Bo Atkinson, who is a redshirt freshman next year, Diego Pounds, who I think is a redshirt sophomore, and then Julian Randolph, who is an incoming tight end, and then Nesbitt. But last year, the tight ends were pretty special for UNC. Bryson Nesbitt, 35 catches for 507 yards and 4 touchdowns. Morales has been consistent his whole UNC career, 29 catches for 358 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Copenhaver, the third guy, who was pretty effective, seemed to catch at least a ball a game, had 15 catches for 222 yards. So John Lilly, 3 years is kind of like the norm almost for assistant coaches these days. But now you have UNC's offensive staff. They lost Phil Longo and they lost Jack Bicknell to Wisconsin. And now John Lilly heads back to the NFL. He had previously coached the Rams and the Browns. And he spent 8 years at Georgia too. So he's coached at Georgia, Florida State, UNC, and now he's head to the Panthers.
Yeah, you could argue that the tight ends were the best position group that Carolina had other than the quarterbacks.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, and oftentimes, your tight end coach, he's involved in the offensive play calling and game planning, but also traditionally in the past has been also one of your better recruiters, just given the fact that, I don't know, this is going to be the tight ends can kind of work with wide receivers or work with the offensive line. And I don't know, it seems like a spot where you get a good recruiter. So it'll be interesting to see what Mac Brown does, whether he goes and finds someone who has experience working with Chip Lindsey, who has experience working with Mac Brown, or someone from the Carolina family. I know there's a lot of names circling around the boards, but we don't really know where this search is going to go. But we do talk to Mac on March 1st. So that's a little over 2 weeks from
Wednesday,
now.
right?
No,
next
Wednesday. Next week.
Next week. Yeah, 28 days in February.
Is that for pre-spring football press conference or something?
Yep.
So Mac likes to move fast, so we'll see if there's a hire by then. That'd be timely, so you wouldn't have to do another press conference, another introduction thing. But
I think he likes to have someone in place too for spring practice to get full advantage. I know that was a big part last year with the offensive line hire. He wanted to have someone in place to get full advantage of those practices, right?
I think spring starts March 5th. Would be the next Sunday or Monday it starts. This guy's from Cleveland, Tennessee. My dad's from there. My dad grew up there.
Yeah, I saw somebody said they were from Clayton. Lewis Moore said he's from Clayton. Yeah.
Love the idea there. Temperature and location.
Yeah, nice. Look, Steve Williams, how close are you to Pass Christian? I got a gift certificate to a restaurant down there that I'm not getting back there. I'd be glad to send it to you.
How about this?
Wow.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cancel you out there. Who'd you have up there?
No, it don't matter.
Cool.
That's Alaska.
That's Alaska, yeah. We got Alaska here, 20 degrees.
And somebody's in Phoenix. This is what trips me out. Everybody thinks Phoenix is hot all the time. 41 in wind day. Not good.
This is Adam's hometown.
Jesus Christ. It was 80. I'm not even going there.
One point on the tight ends coach, Lilly, as well. I think he did a great job developing UNC's talent. Someone like John Copenhaver, right? He was not a super highly touted recruit. I think he was from Roswell, Georgia, was Copenhaver. But he's turned into a really, really productive player for UNC. And I think that's been a theme that we have harped on pretty consistently for UNC football, developing the talent you have, not just relying on, elite prospects to come in. So you're going to miss Copenhagen. You're going to miss Lilly from that perspective as well. He did a really great job with his position group.
Yeah, and all those guys return. So you have all those guys return. They did lose Kendall Carr, who didn't really play much. I think he is at Coastal Carolina now. And you add in a freshman, Julian Randolph, who I think is kind of in the mold of Nesbitt, 6'5", 6'6", 220, 230, needs to put on some weight. Will probably be a project, but definitely has the talent there. So it'll be interesting to see, will they go young, hire some young guy, or John Lilly was kind of a more experienced guy, been around the block. It'll be interesting.
The chat
is hilarious. This is probably a question for Greg, but do you have, because I know there's a limit, you can have 10 paid assistants, right? Do they have to be 5 and 5 on offense and defense? You could potentially hire a defensive coach.
You can do it however you want. You just can only have 10, but now GAs and an analyst can coach on the field now, so you can have 300 coaches if you want, and if you had that kind of money. I mean, look at Alabama. They've got all these analysts and stuff that can coach. That can officially coach, legally coach now. But yeah, you don't have to. I don't think there's any set way you have to organize your coaching staff. It's just you don't want to shortchange a group. This is another reason for folks to be on the Inside Carolina premium boards is there's plenty of threads already on the Tar Pit talking about this tight end hire and who's possible there.
Well, let me just throw this out there then. Lonnie Galloway returns. The tight end room mostly all returns. Why not throw the tight ends in with Lonnie Galloway and then go hire another defensive coach? Why not? Who thinks that's a bad idea? We know where the problems are on this team.
I think you need to come with us on Monday or on March 1st and sit in front row and ask Matt that very question.
I would say that, I think the tight ends do a little bit differently. You can't they do different things than the wide receivers. They're blocking, they're part of the run game, they attach to the offensive line and their pass protection as well. So there is some stuff they have to be taught separately, I think. But it's a fun idea, John.
Let me
Let's
Let me
have
read a
10, let's
comment.
have 10 offensive coaches score 250 points. It doesn't matter what defense does.
This is a comment from Garrett Chapman. He says, hire a defensive line coach. So that's an interesting comment there from Garrett. That's another theory.
That discussion is pretty similar to Dontrez Styles discussion. I mean, it is what it is. It is not going to change.
Tommy, let's talk a little bit about baseball. Maybe we can swing to basketball at the end. But I know you've been doing your Monday shows with Scott Forbes. What's been the storylines of the baseball season so far?
You know, they lost the home opener to Seton Hall, ugly ball game, but they've won 4 straight since then. They go to East Carolina starting tomorrow at 5 o'clock. That place will be a hornet's nest. I think this team can be pretty good. I mean, they've got a ton of talent. The pitching's going to be the deal. And they had a couple good midweek starts with Percival, who's a freshman, who was a stud, and Jake Knapp, who's a transfer, who's a stud. You know, they got to figure out the weekend rotation, but Scott Forbes is a great dude, fun to talk to, gives you everything. It is so pleasant to talk to a coach. I mean, Greg and I talked to him pregame or preseason and ask about the pitching rotation. He turns around, he grabs all his notes, and he goes on for 6 minutes about the pitchers, telling everything, each and everything you can get, talking about it. So it's just a different animal with baseball. Carolina baseball is fun. Ross, I heard you say on the scoop that you went to a couple games. It's awesome to go over there. I'm going to go to the Bosch on Wednesday after MAC. I'm going to try to get there every Wednesday when they play. So it's a fun time. You can get in the game for less than you can buy a beer at the game. So there's really no excuse to not get to the Bosch. And this team could be pretty good.
You got a press pass, right, Tommy?
Yeah.
I went Friday actually. And Tuesday, I mean, it's just like I had nothing to do, so I just went over there on Tuesday. So it was nice weather. I can't talk to you much about the team, but it looks like they got the bat's pretty hot Tuesday and Wednesday, which, I mean, that's good, right? It's got to be good to see, just getting some hits, right?
It is. They hit some home runs. They scored some runs. I mean, Longwood was terrible, and Adam Smith live. Is that from Raleigh, Durham?
Well. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great quality.
Where are you, Adam?
I'm at gate C11 at RDU.
Can you give us a traffic update?
Well, I can tell you that it was 36 degrees when we left South Bend today. I mean, I know, Ross, I know I've been messing with you. You announced that spring is here in Chapel Hill, right? I mean.
Yeah, Tommy chimed in, said it wasn't here.
It's supposed to be 53 degrees and cold tomorrow and raining.
Yeah, 85 today. I don't know.
It was 85 today?
Yeah.
It was close, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Can't you see this sunburn?
Well, you look great, Tommy. You always do.
Yeah, but if you take that head out down here, you're going to get roasted early. It look like your shirt. Look, Adam, what'd you see that we did not see in South Bend on Tuesday night or whenever it was, Wednesday night?
What all have y'all talked about? I'm assuming shooting woes and offensive ineptitude and all that. Is that what we've discussed?
How about you tell us about the post scene? Like, what did the players talk about after? Like, what was kind of the scene after? What happened at halftime, too?
That was my biggest takeaway, and I'm kicking myself that I haven't done more on it. I'm going to try to get it in the preview stuff for UVA. I'm mad at myself. I ran out of gas the other night. I don't know if y'all can hear these announcements. It's pretty damn loud. What do I need to do this? Stop that. I guess, I've got a microphone here.
Tell them you're busy.
Right. The thing I was mainly asking was what was the scene at halftime, and because the response in the second half was enough. I think they scored 44 points in the second half and still didn't shoot it great. I think they shot 42% in the second half. Kind of crazy to think they scored 19 points in the first half and then 44 in the second half. But anyway, I asked RJ Davis. I mean, if you ask RJ Davis a question, if you ask Armando a question, they'll answer it. And I said, what was the vibe like at halftime? Did people get loud? Did someone step up? I was wondering what the leadership and accountability looked like in that moment where, God, imagine how you're feeling last night at halftime. I can only imagine. I saw some tweets from you, Tommy. But 0 assists, right? They had 0 assists. But, RJ said, well, a couple people came in hot. And so it sounded like that. Now, according to Caleb Love, it sounded like assistant coach Brad Frederick kind of went off on them. Then he said Jeff Lebo took a turn. I'm paraphrasing him. And I'm assuming Eric Hoots was the last one in, because I don't know if y'all saw this on TV. He stayed out as halftime started while the officials were reviewing that DeMarco Dunn shot, trying to figure out if DeMarco got it off on time. So Hoots was out there for 3, 4, 5 minutes by the scorers table while the rest of the Carolina team was just in there. So when I think it was RJ that said Hoots came in hot, I was thinking, well, he had plenty of time to get worked up because he was just out there while they were reviewing it. So we heard that Hubert Davis was furious but did not say a cuss word, which I guess he does not curse still. So it sounded like, there were some challenges being made. I guess it's okay to say here at 9:37 p.m. I asked Armando what his main takeaway from the halftime message was, and he said that we need to show we had some more balls, which is available. I see YouTube video if you want to see him say need more balls. But Caleb said it honestly was, it basically was how much do you care about this season? So yeah, I mean, I know. I guess what I wrote was it wasn't a work of art. I mean, that was an absolute struggle. But another interesting comment you might want to check out from RJ Davis was the very last thing he said when we were reporting. Was he sort of pointed out to us. He goes, I mean, a win's a win, and we needed a win, and it's hard to win on the road no matter who you play, which is true. And then he said, you can't be sad all the time. Sometimes you need the rainy days to stop. And I thought that was kind of interesting because he sort of just offered that up. It wasn't like we're grilling him with questions. So I don't know. It took me back to what's the New Edition song? Can You Stand the Rain? Tommy, probably the only one that knows that. But I mean, RJ saying you can't be sad all the time. But what, we're on to Virginia now, I guess. I mean, that was a debacle last night.
So let me ask you this, Adam. When you're up there in South Bend and it's 36 degrees or whatever, and you're sitting there watching this team play, do you ever sit there, especially at halftime, going, I can't believe I'm up here in South Bend, Indiana, watching this? Do you ever find yourself doing that? Because I tell you, the moment I had it is when Carolina was playing LSU in 2010 down in Atlanta, and it was like 30-3 at half or whatever the score was. Yeah, right. Okay, and I'm thinking, what in the am I doing? I drove all the way down here for this. Do you ever get that sense, Adam, when you're sitting there?
I mean, this is the job. I mean, it's not about me. It's about
I'm not saying the job. It's a job, I understand, but really?
Yeah, I mean, think about this. The last 2 road games Carolina has won at Syracuse, we were up there. It snowed the entire time we were up there. And now at Notre Dame, and it was raining sideways. I mean, it didn't stop raining. It was so disgusting, the weather. But Notre Dame, I mean, Ross knows. Ross and I walked all around Notre Dame a couple of years ago when Carolina was up there in football. I'm sure you were up there too, Tommy. I think we saw you.
Yeah.
I mean, Notre Dame is an awesome place, I think. Now the surrounding, Ross, you remember the surrounding Indiana area? I don't know.
It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of rough coming into there.
I don't know how to cross the line.
Notre Dame in the middle of that, like just. But the campus is beautiful. That's
awesome.
That basketball arena, the Purcell Pavilion, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's spotless.
How was the crowd? What was the crowd like? Like how big is that
it was not full. It was not full. I mean, it's Notre Dame's 2-15 in the ACC now. That was Mike Bray's second to last home game. He's got one more home game left. Crowd wasn't great. The place holds, I think, 9,000. It's a small. It's like the size of Cameron. It's a nice facility.
Also think schools like that, like there's not a lot of Notre Dame alums living in South Bend. Like it's a national fan base. The fact that it's kind of like Duke, like there's not a lot living in the area. So you don't get like Carolina, you probably have, 100,000 alums within a freaking 30-mile radius, so it's just hard to get them there. Yeah, and I've heard that this is not – Mike Bray's still going to be coaching somewhere. He's something up with that. Like, he's getting kind of forced out or something. I know Jeff Goodman reported on that. This is his last game at Notre Dame, but he's not done coaching. So
yeah, he says he wants to keep coaching.
He got run out of Notre Dame. I like what he said in the press conference. He didn't say it last night. I think he said it over the weekend. He was like, I say I'm leaving, and they finally allowed me to do a press conference in the football press room.
That's right. That was when the announcement that he was going to step down. Yeah, he kind of – you can only imagine what it must be like at a place like that. And he's kept them relevant. We randomly saw – you know what a nerd I am. We randomly saw at our hotel before we went over there, Matt Farrell. You remember that guy? He kind of has Sam Howell look to him, the white guy with the beard and the brown hair. We saw him at our hotel, and then they ended up honoring him at the game, former Notre Dame guard. I think he was might have been on that team Carolina beat in the Elite Eight. So there were some people coming back. LaFonso Ellis was back. He was on our flights up and back there. He went back. I guess he didn't play for Bray, but he went back, I guess, to see a game. He was there last night. So anyway.
It is. I think it's a cool place. I mean, Notre Dame, the campus is ridiculous and all. But, yeah, I'm not interested in being up there when it's raining, cold rain, sideways for a 9 o'clock basketball game. So appreciate the young.
That good start to the second half too. When RJ he had steal and he scored, then he had another steal. Caleb hits a three. Finally, there's a 3-pointer goes in. There were Carolina people in there. Carolina had a nice showing. Carolina had a good showing at Louisville and at Pitt too. Like, you forget when they're playing bad, they don't have anything to cheer about. They had that nice little burst to start the second half. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Carolina has a pretty good crowd here. There's plenty of Carolina blue, in the building. So they woke up a little bit when the team woke up.
So Adam, what do you think now? Heading Virginia at home, 3 games left. Anything to take away from this game that you think changes your opinion on this team and what they can do moving forward?
Well, I think that I'm such a prisoner in the moment, Ross. I mean, you saw what BC did to UVA last night. And, heck, if Carolina's not careful, BC's going to jump them in the standings. But, I think Virginia has not been playing great, and they've been winning. I think they had won 11 of their previous 12 before the other night, last night. And they have been able to win. And, I don't know. I feel like Carolina – I think Carolina wins the game Saturday. I don't know why. Maybe I'm crazy. I would have been very interested to see what Carolina would have done in Charlottesville last month if Armando had not gotten hurt. Because at that point, Carolina was playing well, and their confidence was not shot like it is now. The confidence of this team is just – they are, in my opinion, so intrinsically aware of the stakes and everything. And they're so aware that they haven't made shots. They just know it when they line these things up. I mean, Hubert and Armando have basically said, when you listen to them, when you really listen to them, they have basically said, it is going to come down to us just making these open shots because they are so there. I'm sure you guys saw them on TV. But Ross, I feel like Carolina, if they can get it together, if they can play like they're capable of it at home, I think they beat Virginia. It's going to be a lot. I was just talking to our photographer, Jim Hawkins. But they play Notre Dame Wednesday night. Now they play UVA Saturday. Then they go to FSU on Monday. This season's we're going to hit the end of this season pretty quickly here.
Look, if they beat Virginia, it's a 2-game win streak. You would think they can handle Florida State. And then look, it's Duke at home on a 3-game win streak. Your confidence probably up a little bit. You probably play a little better. Senior day. I don't know what that means anymore with all the COVID years, and Leakey's had 3 senior days already. But that kind of, if they beat Virginia, it kind of gives you some ideas that maybe they could win out. Duke's playing well right now, I think, but Duke, playing at home, crowd will be rocking, knowing what's at stake, it kind of makes you think a little bit differently now if they can beat Virginia.
I think if they beat Virginia, let's say they beat Virginia Saturday night, I think on Sunday or whenever everybody updates their stuff, I think they're off the bubble for that in that particular moment if they beat Virginia. Virginia will be a quad 1 game. Virginia's still the highest ranked ACC team in the net. They took a huge drop in Ken Palm. But I think, if UNC wins the game Saturday night, they wake up Sunday momentarily in the field. then you got to not lose to FSU, and then you got to try to beat Duke and do the work in the ACC tournament. But, as ugly as Notre Dame was, I think it's huge to win the game and to feel good about yourselves and to prepare for what they know is a huge, huge opportunity on Saturday at the Team Dome.
What a sad state of affairs where we're just hoping and praying they're off the bubble.
You're right.
I mean, having grown up in kind of the Hansborough years where they were killing ACC teams by 20 and, losing only 4 or 5, games a year, it's just kind of like it's a low standard.
If you step out of the moment for a second, I mean, we all thought March is almost here, right? What, March is next week, I guess. We all thought this team would be like a number 1, number 2 seed. You just didn't. You never pictured this amount of drama, needing to take place or taking place. They got on the boards last night too. I mean, I don't know if y'all talked about that. They really, one of the players said that they had talked about sending 3, 4, 5, whoever is playing the 3, the 4, and the 5. So Leaky Pete, Armando, just sending them to the boards. And Notre Dame obviously does not have like a true traditional big. And they manhandled them on the boards. I might have won them the game the way they rebounded.
Anything left, boys? John,
I did want to pull up this question. This is a good one here from Garrett. It's a good one, especially for Adam. We already talked a little bit about the Notre Dame opening.
Whew.
What ACC basketball coaching jobs will be open at the end of the year? This question is from Garrett. Notre Dame's one. Will there be any others?
Georgia Tech might.
Yeah, I mean, NC State was going to be open until Kevin Keats had Kelvin Keats. What am I talking about? Kevin Keats had this great season. I mean, he thought Kevin Keats was on the hot seat. I don't think Duke will be open. I think they're set there for a while.
Yeah, I would say only Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. I mean, they're not going. It's not Florida State. It's not Miami. Just go.
Before this season happened, you thought Keats and Jeff Capel probably would get fired, and Capel they've had a great year at Pitt.
And it seems like the Boston College coach is winning some games. At least showing a little promise. I think he's in year 3.
Second year. Should be second year.
Second year.
And Louisville coach is not going anywhere. I mean, even though they're terrible, he's not going anywhere.
I mean, is Leonard's fine at Florida State, right? I'm looking at the standings here.
I mean, he's old, so he could.
He's very old.
At some point, he's got to retire. But
how about Jim?
You know what? Boeheim, he may retire. You never know.
Are they going to have to? They're going to have to pry him out of that job, aren't they?
I was going to say they're going to have to roll him or cart him off. He's not going to leave.
He's pushing 80. Isn't he 78?
Yeah.
It's something ridiculous. He's so crusty on those Zoom press conferences on Monday mornings. It's ridiculous.
You would think just like retire and go live in Florida. Like, why are you putting yourself through it in Syracuse, berating student reporters? Like, go live where it's warm for a couple years before you pass.
Right. You've only got so many years left, right?
Yeah,
don't you think you've squeezed everything you can?
Yeah.
I think he's coached Syracuse for 47 years.
These coaches are different, man. It's like their whole life. It's like.
Well, it's kind of like, Bear Bryant at Alabama back in the day. He said, what else am I going to do? And he dead 3 months later after he retired.
Right?
Joe Pa too, right?
Yeah.
Joe Pa died shortly after he got kicked out.
But they, so it's a thing. But yeah, I'm not. I figured Boeheim would be gone when his 8 sons were finally used all their eligibility.
Right, and they're done.
Yeah, they're gone. I don't think there's going to be a grandchild coming up soon enough, I'm sure.
That Larinaga down in Miami. He's older.
Well, he can. I don't think they want him gone at all. I mean,
he's living the life. He's already down at the beach.
But he's an old dude. I remember when COVID hit, and I was like, "Good Lord!" Half the coaches in the ACC are 70 plus. Coach K, Roy, Leonard, Boeheim, Larinaga. I was like, before you knew what was going to happen, I was like, "Good Lord, protect the coaches!"
Jeez.
We thought the elderly was so susceptible. Anyway, sorry.
Adam, you got any takes on how will you remember the John Lilly era at UNC?
I kind of feel like it's a big loss. What do you think, Ross? You guys have talked about it? Your mustache looks great, by the way.
Yeah, it's coming in.
You're doing a good job. Look at that. That's what everybody wants right in the living room. I felt like John Lilly has been instrumental in helping Bryson Nesbitt develop. You think about Nesbitt being such a great athlete at that position, but maybe raw and maybe, not experienced in being a tight end. Seemed like Mac, Mac says a lot of stuff, but seemed like Mac gave a lot of compliments to Lilly this year in terms of helping grow the offense. They incorporated the tight ends obviously a lot more. And he always talked about what a good working relationship he had with Phil Longo. I know that doesn't matter anymore, but it seems like everybody thought really highly of John Lilly. I don't know if what you guys have said.
Yeah, I mean, developed the tight ends, so they're very productive last year. So
he's with the Panthers, right? I mean, this was all happening while we were traveling. He left for the Panthers job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, news broke
around. He's an NFL guy, wasn't? Didn't he have several stops in the NFL before?
Just 2 or 3 years, yeah.
Was it?
Hey, all the players are trying to make it to the NFL. Can't fault a coach from going. Maybe he'll do something with the Panthers because, God, they stink.
Tommy, we need you to get on a who will Carolina hire as a tight ends coach.
I'm going to go straight to the premium message board and look at Mac TTP's thread because I have no idea. Alan Mogridge.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be a good name. Gunnar Brewer. I mean, those type guys. But who knows, man? We'll see what happens. We'll talk to Mac on March 1st. Ross and Adam will be front and center on that. I sit in the back with the old people and just observe from afar. Anything left, boys? Adam, you need to get to the house. You've been away for a while. John B., you got a famous stat of the day before we get out of here?
It's time for the most famous John B., this portion of the show.
Oh.
Armando Bacot has showed up in Season 3 of Outer Banks.
Don't spoil it. I've only watched 3 episodes. When's he show up?
I won't spoil it, but check out the Inside Carolina Shorts YouTube channel to get a little sneak peek, Tommy. There's your tease for all the people listening and watching.
I watched the episode before we got on the Beat Live podcast.
Do we want to give predictions for the UVA basketball game? Should we go around?
Yeah, let's pull this up here. Garrett Chapman.
Oh, there we go, Garrett.
I'll start. I'll go 62-58 Virginia.
The SAT scores 420. Oh no, that's wrong. That's Saturday. Carolina doesn't break 50.
Bam.
I don't know what Virginia does. Carolina doesn't break 50. I think Carolina could win, but God, I can't predict them to win.
I got 59-51 Virginia.
Well, you got Adam. If you're covering the game, can you make a prediction, aka Herb Street?
Ross covering the game. He can make a prediction. Yeah, I mean, right. That's a good one. I don't know. Well, wonder what the line would be. I guess UVA would be favored, obviously.
Yeah, maybe by a couple points.
I'm gonna say UNC 66, UVA 61. I think the first game Virginia won 65-58. Carolina had obviously that was one of the games. It was one of the games we talked about with Carolina was up 7 in the second half. I think they were up at least 6, and
over under Carolina threes in that game.
Man,
what's the number?
Are the floodgates ever going to open, or are they just not going to open?
We'll set it at 7. Over under 7.
Under.
Way under.
If it's way under, Carolina's not winning. What do you think, Adam? Over under 7.
How amazing is that? They shot 8% from 3-point range last night.
I mean,
what over under? What's the number?
I'm gonna give 8. Over under 8 threes.
Under. I gotta say under. I mean,
I have no idea. I quit trying to figure out this team. I just watch and observe and then talk about it later. Steve Williams says made or taken. I would wager over under 20 taken. We're going over.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the last time UVA was in the Dean Dome. I think we could say truthfully Armando had the best game he's ever played. 29 points, 22 rebounds. I think it was the day that Carolina hired Gene Chizik too. I think we were pretty busy that day, Ross. I remember we were sitting right side by side, and it was like, "You've got to be kidding me." But Armando manhandled them last year. Now he ain't gonna face single coverage against Jalen Gardner or Shedrick or whoever, but
he also broke Shedrick's nose in that game early.
He did.
Shedrick of Holly Springs fame.
But those games mean a little something more to Armando. He was really upset the night that he got hurt at Charlottesville and he couldn't keep playing, being a Virginia native. Those things, they're important to him. So we'll see how he comes out.
Yep, let's get out of here. Like Sean Crawley says, survive in advance. Carolina is in the second round of the NCAA tournament on Saturday night, quite frankly, against Virginia. I'll say 54 to 52.
Man.
Houston, NC State, 1983 score. Somebody wins it. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be really ugly. Guys, it's been fun. It's been On the Beat Live, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Shout out to Adam Smith for joining us from RDU. And shout out to the RDU Wi-Fi. I'm impressed.
Got right on it with my MacBook Pro.
It sounded great. John Bauman for producing this stuff and Ross Martin for being here. I'm Tommy Ashley. We'll see you again next week, same time. Post-game after Virginia, Inside Carolina Live, Saturday morning. Adam, you're on it. I don't know if you know it yet, but you're talking to Joey and I on Saturday morning.
I have been in communication with Joey Powell. He's got jokes.
Guys, take care of everybody.